Hi, I'm Monica Cummings, and I work at BambooHR as a talent acquisition partner.
I'm Carly. I'm a talent acquisition partner at BambooHR.
My name is Megan Westover, and I am a talent acquisition partner here at BambooHR.
I would first say most people probably don't know what experience design really is. It's a newer program from my understanding, so being able to figure out how am I going to articulate it is probably the first thing to figure out. But after that, I think if you're able to help people see that you have kind of a blend, a hybrid of the business side of things and understanding the objectives and that side, but also the creative side and how am I going to design this so that people actually want to interact with this experience. I mean, that's gold. I don't think people are doing that everywhere. So if you're able to articulate that, that's huge. And then people will understand the value and how you're different from other business students.
Yes, so I would say just think about what classes that you take or what skills you might have that sets you apart from other departments. So think about maybe if you're focusing more on customer journey or working with people and the psychology of things, like really highlight that and just show what is making you different than any other business student and really try to highlight that.
I would say most soft skills probably just come out naturally in an interview process as you're communicating and answering questions. But then going beyond that, when people are asking you, hey, how did you drive a project forward, or asking more tangible questions like that, figure out a way to highlight your top few soft skills in answering that question. So as you drove that project forward, how did you go about it? Not just what you did. I think the how is what is overlooked sometimes in an interview process, and that's really, really important, especially if you have a few really strong skills you want to highlight.
Okay, so if it's in an interview setting, I would say always back everything up with a story. So don't just say like, oh, I'm really good at communicating with people. Really try to say that, but then back it up with real examples of how you're a good communicator. And I think a lot of, like Monica said, a lot of your soft skills can come through during an interview. So if you're a friendly, happy, fine, like inquisitive person, like be yourself and show those as you interview, because a good rapport with your interviewer goes a long way and shows like, oh, like I think this person is, they're smart or they're sharp. Like I can just tell by how they're interacting with me.
So it's different for every company, but for Bamboo, we actually love doing reference checks. And a big thing about that is we can get to know someone through just even the reference check, which you can get to know their soft skills, right? Someone can say they're a good communicator, or they're kind, or they're a team worker, but it's interesting to go ask someone who's experienced it. So I think, like we all know, actions speak louder than words. So just show it in your actions with your current employees and employers, because it will come back to haunt you, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
That is really dependent on the position, I would say. That's one thing I love about software and kind of the SaaS environment is there's so many tools that we use. So, I mean, we look for a million. I mainly hire for BizOps here, business operations. So there's a lot of CRM tools and data analysis tools, data visualization tools. So just getting familiar with the common leaders in the space, and a lot of them have free trainings and things like that, so that you can kind of dip your toes in is going to be helpful. But the specific tech is going to be really dependent on the position, I think.
So it depends on the role, as we've all said, but I think something that kind of goes to that question is just be honest with the skills that you have, but you can speak to, hey, I was able to learn this hard skill, so I feel like I could learn this one that I'm not as familiar with.
I guess I would say fresh out of college, I wouldn't worry too much about the money that you're making initially, or the size, like the big name companies that are like flashy. They're awesome companies. I mean, there's a reason why they're large and doing well, but I would say when you're fresh in your career, focus on what are the skills, the exposure, the experience that I'm trying to jumpstart my career. So think about it more in that way, and then the rest will follow. If you start getting that exposure and experience, then yeah, hopefully you make the big bucks, right? And you end up at a big company if that's your goal. But yeah, I think that's really important. And then on the size of the company too, think about what you want to do and if the size of the company is matching that. So a really large company, you might be more siloed, which is maybe what you want to do. Maybe you want to really, really focus on one thing. A really small company, you might be wearing a million hats, and maybe that's not what you want to do, or maybe it is. And then a medium size is kind of a combination. So looking at that and then also thinking about it more as a jumpstart for your career, I think is probably a few pieces of advice. I told you I couldn't just leave it to one. So,
as much as I would hate to hear this response, I think really perfecting your interview skills goes a long way, because if you have two candidates who are exactly the same, they have all the same qualifications, it's kind of who did I have a better interaction with, who really sold me more. I would also say, like, be eager, be excited, be hungry to learn, and be excited about the role, about the company, like anything you can do to show that, like, I really want this job, like I really like it here. I interviewed a girl a few months ago, and she was not the most qualified, but she really came off in her interview so sharp, so inquisitive. She just asked all these questions that really showed me that she understood the job, even if she wasn't the most qualified in the job, but she understood it. And I was like, we're passing her through, and she's the one who we ended up hiring. So just really coming off sharp, which is lame, but having a good interview.
Okay, the first one that I thought of is always be learning. My biggest thing is you're not going to get every role that you apply for. So if you get a decline, reach back out and ask for feedback. Ask, like, why wasn't I interviewed for it, or was there a problem with the interview? That way you can learn from it for your next interviews. That's a good way to eventually get a job. The second piece is, I actually looked this up. So there's statistics out there that almost 80% of the people who get roles is through a networking connection. So the best way to get a job is to network and connect with people that you know or people that you get to know, because in the end, that truly will get you a job.
sometimes I think people go and apply to so many jobs that they might not have done their research. So I think it's very, very important to show that you actually understand what is the company's goal, what are they selling, or what is their service, what are their products. Really researching that I think is really important. It's kind of the basics, right? Like, why is this company even around? But then beyond that, I think it's important to research the culture, try to understand that and write down questions, right, as you see things online. I think that's really important. And then the last thing I would say is really read the job description, because it usually describes the company a little bit and the role. And same thing, write down questions as you're going through and reading it so that you come with very solid, here's the things that I'm confused about, this doesn't make sense, or tell me more about this, will really help you. One of my favorite things on a resume is when it's so readable. I think sometimes people assume that there's some magical machine behind the scenes that is looking for keywords or something and grading it and putting yours at the top or 5 stars if it has keywords. Maybe that's out there. I haven't seen it a ton. I think for the most part there's a human looking at your resume. So is it readable? Does it make sense? Can people very clearly see what you've done? Or is it hard and really long sentences, big words, things like that? I also really love it when people have kind of a tools section on the side. I've seen that a lot lately. That's really nice to just quickly see, oh, they've used Salesforce, they've used Tableau, they've used these different things. So those are a few things.
So what stands out, obviously experience is king. If you're not hitting those certain qualifications that are asked for in the job description, then you're probably not going to get a phone call. So making sure that if you see in the job description, we want someone who has experience with Salesforce. And it's like, okay, well then I need to put on my resume that I have experience here, or say how much experience or what your experience is. So really tailoring your resume to fit the job description, because if they can see they have that experience that I'm asking for in this job description, then that's going to stand out. So tailoring your resume per job, which again, it's not fun. It's not what people want to hear, but kind of necessary.
I would say the most common interview mistake would be being afraid to just be yourself and be honest when you don't have experience in something. To me, that's a huge show of bravery and like genuine humanness, I guess, when somebody admits like, no, I actually haven't had the opportunity to do that or exposure to that yet, but I'm super excited to learn it. And I think sometimes people feel like they failed that question if they answer no. And I think most of the time, depending on the culture, it's actually viewed as a positive thing that you know where you need to grow.
For me, an interview mistake is thinking an interview is just for the company. An interview is definitely for the individual applying and for the company. So many times people come in and they just say yes to everything and don't ask questions that kind of butt heads with what we're like. No. Like, an interview is as much for the company as it is for someone being interviewed. So come in with questions that, hey, I had this concern, can I bring it up with you? Or, you know, I had this question that I'm unsure about. Do that, because if you say yes to an offer, you're saying yes to, you know, as much as the company's saying yes to you.
I think a few things. One would be look on Glassdoor. I still feel like it's the leading site for that type of information, and for the most part it's pretty accurate. Keep in mind it's only a subset of the employee population though, and when are you going to review? Either when you're super stoked about the company or when you're hating the company, so keep that in mind. But it is really great. I would say the other thing is just talk to people who have worked there. Recruiters are often really busy, and I think sometimes you think you have to talk to a recruiter about a company. I don't think that's the case. You can reach out to other people on LinkedIn and say, hey, I've worked there for a few years, I'd love to chat. So talking to actual people who have been there, and then also doing your online research, different review websites.
And what the company says itself, usually a company on their company page will have like an about us, our culture. Of course it's showing like the best, most awesome rosy parts, but still you can definitely learn there.
So there's always talking to employees, that's a big one. But one I thought of, this is kind of going beyond if you really want to, if you're really curious, go talk to a client of the company, because they're the ones who actually have to work with the company and fill that culture. I think it's good to come with questions, but I would say know what you want. Again, don't mold yourself around what you think the company wants, because again, you won't be happy in the long run. Just know what you want, know who you are, and then ask those type of questions.
I think it's important to let them know what you're passionate about, what your end goal is, but also be real about where you're at right now, and let them know the different pathways that you're interested in that, you know, would work quicker, if that makes sense, where, you know, sometimes maybe you're in school to be a product designer or something, and so you're like, I'm stoked, I'm so excited to get into product design, but if that's your only goal and you're not willing to also experience other areas of the business, that might limit you sometimes if it's super competitive. So know your end goal, but also figure out, are there steps in between that I'm willing to do, and talk about those at a career event too, so that they see you as somebody who's willing to grow and with a company.
I always like the question of, you know, what skills do you need for the role? Not because you're going to have all the skills, but if it's a role that you really want and it's a skill you can go learn it. So it's always good to ask kind of what skills they're looking for, whether it's a certain department or certain role, or even just the company in general. Also, you should always ask for who you're talking to, their LinkedIn connection, because we talk to so many people throughout the day. It's best if just you take care of that connection and then reach out later.
One would be LinkedIn. LinkedIn is just the best and the worst thing, right? It consumes me. I'm always scrolling on there. But yeah, I would say definitely connect with people on LinkedIn. A lot of companies are doing more employer branding. We try to do that here. So you'll see posts from us. You'll start to get a feel for like, what is this company about that way, and network. Another thing would probably just be aware of what's going on with the company. You know, listen to the news on it. I don't actually listen to the news, but like read, you know, what's going on online, blog posts about the company and things like that, so that you can be aware of, okay, they're expanding here, they're growing here, that might be a good time to reach out. And then go to events if they're gonna be there. The more FaceTime, the better. But yeah, LinkedIn is for sure your number one
We love cookies being sent to us. No, just kidding. No, LinkedIn. You know, I think it's a pretty repetitive answer that you hear, but it right now in our day, it's the way to connect.